All right, deliverability myth busting. Who's seen Mythbusters? Yeah? Okay. So the idea of this presentation was basically to talk about these things that people assume you can do in email, but for any of you that have worked in email or work in email now, I'm going to tell you you can't do them. We'll get to that in a minute. First, that's me. You guys know who I am. I run industry relations for SendGrid, which means that I get to work with the anti-abuse industry, marketers, and folks in the privacy world to make sure that SendGrid's constantly plugged into best practices. I spend a lot of time in the air, like Paul does, flying around different events and making sure that we're on top of the ever-changing world of email because it changes on a second-by-second basis. We've seen this enough. I'm just going to skip this. This is us. We work with all of these people and 55,000 other paying customers that range in size and scope from, guys sending a couple hundred mails a month to millions. All right. The myths. So we reached out to a bunch of our friends in the industry that we work with, and we said, hey, what are those things that you've heard in sales presentations from clients, from partners, where you decided to bang your head against the wall so hard you knocked yourself out because you couldn't believe what they were saying? And they came back with this really, really long list. It was ridiculous. And we said, okay, we can't do all of them, so let's pick the 17 or so juiciest ones, and we're going to talk about them. And some of these probably might apply to some of you here in the room or that you've seen happen or thought about doing. But more or less, this is supposed to be a slightly interactive session, which means you get to tell me if the myth is true, plausible, or totally busted, okay? So let's get going. Myth number one, buying a CD of addresses on eBay is a total growth hack. Paul says thumbs down. What do you guys think? Busted, that's right. That was the easy one. Start off slow, okay? Look, this actually exists. I pulled this off of eBay in August. 14 million opted-in Yahoo and Gmail addresses for the bargain price of $3. Now, I'm sure there's somebody out there that actually went and bought this because it says 47 watching it and a few sold, and he probably felt like this, and then like 5 minutes later after he sent it, he probably felt more like this. Because in reality, this is the worst practice you can have. Every time you buy a list, a kitten somewhere dies. Don't do it. And here's why. Ben Franklin said, it takes many good deeds to build a good reputation, only one bad deed to destroy it. And this is absolutely true when it comes to email. You spend a long time sending email to people that really want to receive it. That helps you build a brand reputation. Your IP has history because, believe it or not, the internet never forgets. That really embarrassing picture you posted on Facebook, doesn't matter if you removed it. Somebody took a screenshot of it. It's going to be there for all time is the point. And the same thing is true with email. Everything you do, good and bad, gets recorded somehow on your IP or domain. So the idea here is don't do bad things that will destroy your ability to reach your users. Now, fundamentally, let's say you did purchase this list despite all the warnings you received this week to not buy a list. Well, besides the kitten dying, you're going to have problems with your reputation. You're not going to be able to deliver email to the inbox. And honestly, buying a list is actually potentially bad for you in the sense of legal compliance. You could get sued. All right, GDPR means you need explicit opt-in. Buying a list is not explicit opt-in, and you could be sued for a lot of money. Now, the other thing I want you to keep in mind is this concept of, hey, I'm just going to rent this list, or this is all really high quality, I've been assured. A lot of these lists have been circulated so often over time that bodies like Spamhaus know the exact dynamics. So when they see bounces happening in a certain order, they basically look at the IP that's sending it and go, purchase list, block it, period, done, end of story. And then you have a really hard day, trust me. All right, myth number two, the more email you send, the more money you'll make. True, busted? I see some shaky heads. I'm going to say it's plausible. I'll tell you why. So if you sent a lot of email to the people that want to receive it, you could be like Jerry Maguire screaming, show me the money. Now, this is totally doable. The problem is, how do you know who is engaged and who is not? And this is really what we have to focus on, is engagement. So sending too much email to people that don't want to receive it, I have to defer to the Google Postmaster team, which basically said a good sender landing in the spam folder is generally the result of sending too much mail. So the question is, who gets the good mail and who gets the bad mail, and why is that important? Well, it's because engagement is an individual thing, and individuals determine how mail is filtered. Now, I'm going to refer to Gmail a couple times because it is the largest mailbox provider on the planet and also the most sophisticated mailbox provider on the planet. the postmaster at Gmail has broken it up into two categories. There are positive engagement signals and negative engagement signals. On the positive side, when someone opens a message, that actually improves your reputation. Remember the whole thing about the internet never forgets? Well, Gmail doesn't forget either. They record all of these things that essentially help your reputation. Replying to a message is a very positive reputational signal. So all of us that use do not reply because we don't want to be bothered with checking the replies and processing them and making sure somebody is responding, you could actually be helping your overall IP reputation if you did have a reply to address as opposed to a do not reply address. When someone adds you to the address book, all of your address book campaigns, that's actually a very good thing. So even though it seems kind of old, like the add to address book thing was circa 2000, it's still a positive thing when it happens. On the negative side, when someone marks it as spam, that's not good, we know that. But how many emails do you delete on your phone every morning just swiping left without opening? That's a really negative signal. And that makes you think, okay, how do I get someone to stop swiping left? Well, you have a good, compelling subject line. You have content that they want to engage with. And if you know your customers, you can start delivering messages that truly breed engagement, so it kind of dissuades someone from swiping left. Look, you can send a lot of email. If you send a lot of email to the segments that want to receive it, you're going to do well. The problem is knowing which segments should get more mail and which segments shouldn't. Don't assume your entire list is identical. That's the important thing. So we did an experiment with a customer who was having some delivery challenges. The blue line actually represents overall volume. And when they started telling us of their problems, the delivery team came up with this great idea. They said, we're going to cut 80% of your list. And the customer said, do you want to get fired? And the team said, no, seriously, we're going to do this thing. And then we went to our executive and said, we're going to cut 80% of this customer's list. And the executive team said, do you want to get fired? And the delivery team said, no, trust us, this is good. What happened was when the volume dropped, the spikes for open rates actually became more frequent. That's an almost 80% cut in volume. And as you can see, the green line represents the trend line. Opens and engagement actually went up. So the moral of the story is we live in a world where less is more. Sending less email overall is a good thing because that means you're taking the noise out of the signal. You're getting a more concise and pure view on how people are engaging. Sending email to people who don't want to receive it just means you're going to get deleted. Mark this spam. All right, which brings us to myth number 3. Never remove anyone from your list. Just don't do it. You'll lose money. Yeah, I see some down thumbs. Yeah, totally busted. Again, people that don't want to receive email are more likely to bounce. They're more likely to mark your message as a spam. And again, because the Gmail postmaster said don't do it. One thing he did point out, which was kind of interesting, was he said, every marketer in the world has this concept of ramp up and warm up. We go, start small, get bigger, full production volume, right? The problem is very few of us have this concept of ramp down, where someone who is engaging less is receiving less email until we set a hard cutoff date where we sunset that address. When you think about how you should do engagement, think about it as a customer lifecycle. At some point, you got to say goodbye to the customer. They're leaving you. The same is true with email. Like pounding their email box and carpet bombing it on a regular basis is not a winning strategy. All right, you should bury your unsub link. Why would you want to make it easy for people to leave? Yeah, thumbs down, totally busted. Look, unsubbing is just basically saying, it's not you, it's me. I gotta go, all right? If you make it hard for someone to leave, what's the opposite? What is the only alternative? They mark you as spam. Bad. And then it's harder to engage with everybody else that does want to receive your email. So on the day that the iOS native unsub feature came out, we actually saw more unsubs than spam complaints. It was remarkable. All of these people actually took the time to use that new feature in iOS, marked a message as spam, which prevented a lot of reputations from being destroyed. Unsubbing is a good thing, okay? It's a painless way for someone to disengage. It doesn't ruin your reputation. More importantly, it makes it easy for them to come back because you're not in the spam folder at that point. It means they can subscribe to your list down the road. Think of the long term. All right, if I can just figure out what these spam trap addresses are, my problems will be solved. What do you guys think? True, false, busted? Paul's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's actually true. But this is a trick question because if you went looking for those addresses, you'd be like this guy, a very sad panda. Spam traps are like a minefield. They're not meant to be found. If you know where the mines are, what good is a spam trap, right? So when people say, we can clean your list of all the spam traps, they're actually full of shit. They can clean your list off of a handful of known addresses, and that's about it. But Spamhaus operates tens of millions of domains and addresses. You're not going to find them. Instead, let's focus on list hygiene. How do we keep a list healthy? It depends on what is coming into the list. You know that concept of garbage in, garbage out? Well, let's stop the garbage from getting into the list in the first place. So if you collect addresses through a human being, human beings are prone to errors, like writing down mike@yahoo.com at hotmail.com. That actually made it into a list, believe it or not. Things like this actually would hurt your reputation because essentially an ISP or a mailbox provider would look at what you're sending and go, well, that's junk. They're not keeping a healthy list. I'm going to block them or decrease their throughput and throttle rate, which is going to make it harder for you to get in the inbox. Now, this concept of mailing the dead, there have been lots of domains over time that have gone away. Basically, companies fail, and those that accepted email on scale have also failed. Terra was a huge mailbox provider down in Brazil that is no longer operating. You should have taken all of those Terra addresses out of your mail system a long time ago. Athome.com, CompuServe, those addresses still exist in lists. And guess what? Clever people actually buy up those old dead domains and turn them into spam trap networks after a certain amount of time. AOL used to do this back in 2003, 2004 on a regular basis. They would let an email address go dead for a while and then turn it back on to see who hadn't removed it when it was issuing a hard bounce. They call those honeypots. And if you landed in them, you actually were going to regret it. Role accounts. Most ESPs will filter out role accounts automatically. These are essentially designated and reserved addresses that will probably never sign up for anything. If you do find them on your list, you should actually question how they got there and do some research to figure out who subscribed them and why they weren't removed. And mostly it's the unengaged segments. So yesterday a question was asked, how do I clean my list? How do I keep my database healthy? Well, start with engagement. Start with logical buckets for what constitutes someone that is engaged with your mail program and someone that is completely disengaged with your mail program. At one point, AOL said you shouldn't be sending to anyone that hasn't engaged or opened an email as the most simple and basic form of engagement in 9 months or more. Some people will try 6 months. Figure out what is right for your mail program and your business and use that as a baseline to test different engaged segments. And when we say clean your list of people that are unengaged, consider sending a lot less to those that haven't opened or clicked on an email in 6 to 9 months because, again, they represent that part of your list that can cause you the most damage. All right, 6, clicking an unsub link proves that your address is legit and you'll get more email. What do you guys think? It's true, actually. In 2003, which is the only way this would have been true. So this is the History Channel portion of this presentation. There was actually a time when if you clicked an unsub link, you would get more email because spammers were abusing the hell out of unsub mechanisms. That stopped around 2003 because of 2 primary things. One, in the United States at least, we passed CAN-SPAM, which actually put a framework saying you need to have a working electronic unsub mechanism. And then AOL invented the spam button, and we all curse them to this day for doing so. But as users, I think it's a powerful and good tool. Nonetheless, there was a time when these things were problematic. All right, myth number 7. If they buy something, they get all the email. All of it. Yay? Nay? Yeah, busted. So we have preference centers. They're very powerful. We assume as marketers that the conversation has shifted from us controlling it to people controlling it. They choose the mode of engagement. They choose the channel of engagement. Hell, they choose the time of engagement. We're always trying to figure out when are they most likely to engage. So naturally, they should choose how often and the types of email that they should receive. Sending someone all the messages is bad and is potentially challenging in terms of legal compliance. So who here has seen pre-checked boxes? In May, you probably won't see any more pre-checked boxes because it is actually illegal under GDPR to use pre-checked boxes. And again, GDPR could be as painful as 4% of global revenue and 20 million euro, whichever is greatest. Be aware that your need to send more email to more people has to be tempered with this. Otherwise, it's going to hurt. All right, myth number 8. Contrary to what you may think or feel, ISPs don't hate bulk senders. Do you guys ever feel like, God damn it, Hotmail hates me? Well, it's actually true. They don't hate you. What you have to understand is that ISPs are fighting an uphill battle. I pulled this data out of Telos, which is an anti-spam solution through Cisco. 85% of all mail that traverses their system is abject spam. This is ransomware, this is malware, viruses, things basically designed to siphon money out of your bank accounts one way or another. The problem hasn't gotten better, not by much. This is from 2011, 2014. All of the member ISPs of the Messaging Malware Mobile Anti-Abuse Working Group donated information, and back then it was as bad as 90%. 9 out of every 10 emails that a mailbox provider or an ISP sees are just the worst type of mail you can imagine. Email is an open system. We essentially never assumed that it would be as big as it is today. Therefore, it is the most exploited messaging system in the world because of its openness. Good and bad. If my seeds are inboxed, my campaign is too, or my seeds land in the junk folder, Houston, we have a problem. This is about testing. What do you guys think? Well, it's plausible, but really what we have to understand is how do we test and what are we looking for? So who here knows what seed testing is? All right, seed testing. When you take a list of seeds and send them out with a campaign and then automate the retrieval of those seeds through tools like Return Path or 250OK, you get a sense of how a campaign performs. The problem is, though, sending out a seed list with a campaign versus just sending to a seed list delivers very different results. If I was to take a template and send it just to a seed list, then what I'm doing is essentially testing a moment in time. The ability of that IP to deliver that content and this domain at this moment in time. That is not actually representative of how a campaign performs because there is no one interacting with that message. They are not clicking spam. They're not pulling it out of a spam folder. They're not putting it into specialized folders. Therefore, it is not likely to be indicative of how something performs. It'll only tell you if the content delivered or not. So a lot of people spend a lot of time running around going, oh my God, my seeds went to the spam folder. What do I do? Well, was it a campaign? Was it just a content test? Which one was it? Understanding the difference between those two will save you a lot of time, but more importantly, to get a really holistic and good picture of deliverability, we need to have a lot more data at our disposal. So we talk about people opening messages and clicking on messages. That's a human response. You have to get down to the level of the machine response, which is access to log files and seeing what the actual bounce codes were in order to diagnose the problem. If your seed testing uncovers a problem, without this level of data, you're going to have a hard time diagnosing what the real problem is. So make sure you get your arms around all of the machine responses, the efficacy data, and any kind of directional analysis you can get out of tools like 250OK and Return Path and any other tools out there. All of this combined is going to help you diagnose it because the things that you see from inside your own network, that's only part of the story. All right, all triggered messages are transactional. Busted. How about this one? My welcome series is totally transactional. Yeah, totally busted as well. I got only one slide on this. All transactional emails are triggered, not all triggered emails are transactional. Remember this, and you will do okay. Because not remembering it, you're going to have problems. Trust me. Basically, we have two very different designations, especially when you look at the United States and canned spam. Canned spam defines what is transactional and what is commercial in that very loose legal way that lawyers like to speak and politicians approve with a stamp of Congress. But nonetheless, it differentiates two classes of email. More importantly, ISPs treat that email differently, so you need to be able to think about things as transactional and triggered and not the same. All right, 12. You should send your transactional and commercial email from the same IP. It'll totally help deliverability. Sounds rational? No. Totally busted. Separation of church and state. And if this graphic isn't speaking to you, don't cross the streams, ever. Just don't do it. Again, there are two classes of email. One is going to have a very different reputation from the other. But for a simpler, more operational reason why you should separate it, you want granular reporting. You want to know when someone unsubscribes from a commercial message versus what they did with the transactional. Who unsubscribes from shipping confirmations? Anyone? No, you just don't do it, right? So naturally, that class of email is going to have a higher response rate and better deliverability than any of your commercial mail because people get sick of commercial mail and Sending too much makes them even sicker of it. All right. The addresses I collect via my web forms are submitted by the owners of those addresses. This is about ownership. I see you shaking your head. You're kind of like, that man is a skeptic right there. It's plausible. However, this is where I get to tell you the world is a horrible place filled with bad people that do horrible things. In the fall of 2016, we began to see a scary new attack. Oh man, my video's broken. All right, no problem. We began to see a scary new attack where spam bots would basically go out and subscribe a single address to tens of thousands of web forms. Now, the video would have showed you mail coming in so fast that it would make your head spin into somebody's inbox, one of my colleagues. We began to call this list bombing. So what happened was that a bunch of ESPs got blacklisted by Spam House. It was really kind of weird because there's no monetary upside for this. When spammers do things, they do it because they want to make money from the people that they're trying to abuse. They weren't making any money by taking Brian Krebs, a cybersecurity journalist, email and putting it into 100,000 forms. They literally rendered his inbox useless. He couldn't use it. So his Gmail address has been abandoned since. It happened to a number of anti-spammers out there, journalists, and other folks in the industry who are very vocal about anti-abuse. It was literally a personalized DDoS attack on the inbox. So what happened? Spamhouse basically said, marketers, you need to start putting CAPTCHAs on your web forms because they're being abused badly. Someone is weaponizing ESPs in order to deliver enough content that it renders a mailbox null. Besides that, the other thing that would help would be confirmed opt-in. If you're not already doing this, you're going to need to start doing this because of GDPR here in Europe. You already need to do this because of Castle in Canada. In the United States, the Wild West, you don't ever need to do that. But nonetheless, it is a good practice because confirmed opt-in would have stopped it at least one message, not 100 messages constantly being sent over and over. So think about it. It can not only ensure that your list stays healthy, it'll actually prevent abuse, which is always a good thing for everybody. It makes the internet a happier place with cat videos. I need like 1 billion sending IPs. No, seriously, I really do need that many. Right? Like everybody needs more IPs, right? No, it's busted. Let me introduce you to this concept called snowshoe spamming. The purpose of a snowshoe is to spread load across a wider area so you don't sink in the snow. Spammers do the exact same thing. Who here knows what a botnet is? Yeah, a few of you? Okay, quick thing on botnets. When computers get infected with malware, somebody else is controlling them remotely, and they turn them into tiny little mail servers. So your mom and grandma who are opening these cute files from their friends overseas, they're actually getting infected with malware and someone's controlling their machine. They call you up and they go, why is it running so slow? That's because in the background, it's sending spam on behalf of a botnet operator. There are a lot of little machines doing this, which spreads the load across lots and lots of IPs. So when you have too many IPs, you essentially look exactly like a snowshoe spammer to an ISP. It has the same characteristics. Additionally, if you're working with an ESP and you are getting more IPs because you have enough volume, ask them to try to keep them in line, meaning that they're contiguous IPs. They start at a number and go in a sequence across, because spreading them on different net blocks means you're going to look, again, like a snowshoe spammer. We assign multiple IPs for our SendGrid customers that have actual large throughput requirements, and we also ramp them up. So if we were to add a new IP, we'd probably start sending 50 emails a day. I know that sounds like nothing. We double it on a daily basis so long as the metrics look good, and we try to segment off the most engaged users, because that's the only way to ramp up a new IP. You have to warm it up slowly and get it up to a production volume with good mail as opposed to just sending any old chunk of email on it. All right, myth number 15. If one IP gets blocked, then just route the mail over a new IP. Sounds like a reasonable thing to do. I mean, like, what? You can do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's so, yeah. Yeah, there are things that we can do. Most of them we shouldn't do. All right, just don't do it. Don't ever do that. Because guess what? If you did do that, you would look like a spammer again, because that's what spammers do. To a spammer, an IP is not a business commodity. To you and I, it is the most basic piece of information out there on the internet that identifies us as a business. Now, we've done a lot of, we're talking about domain reputation. We've been talking about domain reputation for over a decade. It's a thing. It's not the only thing. Your IP is still important. Burning out your IP and then switching to a new IP makes you look exactly like a spammer. But the most fundamental reason not to do it is because you haven't solved the problem. Your new IP will have the exact same problem because problems follow you around, period. You have to deal with the problem. Whatever that problem is, going back to that slide where you saw all the data that you need to diagnose it, that's what you actually have to do. If you switch the IP, you're going to be even in worse shape because Spamhaus and other bodies like that are going to look at you and go, yeah, behaving just like a spammer, block them, done. And then your day really goes to shit. All right, myth 16. You only need to use email authentication if you're having deliverability problems. Who here knows what email authentication is? A handful of you. Okay. Good, this is awesome. Totally false, don't ever listen to anyone that says that. You should always use email authentication. Let me explain why. So when email was invented in 1971 and Ray Tomlinson sent the very first email, there was like 400 people on the internet. Actually, there was only 3 at that point. But nonetheless, nobody actually imagined that email would be what it is today. It just wasn't a thing, right? SMTP, which is the core protocol of email, was last updated in the late 80s, early 90s. It's a very, very old technology and a very old standard. Back then, it wasn't being abused the way it is now. So the problem is that we had to develop systems to identify and establish trust at a machine level, at a technical level that could be verified over and over again. So we came up with a bunch of technologies to bolt on top of email to make email more trustworthy. Now, the first thing we did was that we created SPF, and I'll get to that in a second. Oftentimes, you have to ask yourself why you need to use it, and there are 3 great reasons for it. One is it's a data point for ISPs. They look at it and go, this person is trying to be very forthright and transparent. I should probably give them improved ability to reach the inbox. Second of all, it protects your brand. Who here has heard of phishing and compromises of spoofing? Spoofing, bad thing. Someone's trying to be you on the internet and sending email that kind of looks like you, but is full of things to defraud users. The third thing is that it protects people from receiving the crap that is spoofed and phished, meaning who has gotten an email that looks like their bank but isn't their bank. Yay? A few of you? That's spoofing. That's a phish coming to your inbox to get you to log in, give them a username, password, and then guess what? Your bank account goes down. These are the things that happen. Email authentication actually stopped that. The first was SPF. This was invented in 2003, 2004, and what this basically said was, hi, I'm sending from this IP, and this domain is allowed to send on its behalf. It literally linked the IP and the domain. But because it's a very simple record, spammers began to sign SPF, as they do. So we created a new technology. We created DKIM. And DKIM is actually merged of 2 different technologies once the standard became agreed upon. What DKIM does is that it uses a cryptographic hash of the content of the message. So if somebody actually sends something that looks like yours and they cite your domain, meaning they try to spoof your domain, that crypto hash will say, nope, that's not the email. So now you can start ensuring that the content of the message is what you sent, which is great. It is wonderful if you're a bank and someone's trying to send content that looks like you. But we decided it wasn't enough, so we created DMARC. And what DMARC does is it aligns all of these policies, and it creates a rule set. So now, if someone sends a message that fails SPF and DKIM, in a DMARC policy, you can simply say, drop it on the floor, drop it like it's hot, do not deliver it, which protects all of you as individuals and your businesses from abuse. This is what actually, if everybody in the world was using SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, there would be a lot less spam. There would be no phish, because you couldn't do it. This literally protects the whole stack of the reputation. At that point, the only way someone sends a phish is if they break into your mail server and send it as you with a bad link, and that's it. But there's another reason. So if you do alignment, if you go through and align all of these domains into the proper formatting and get them all right and they all check out, you actually get enhanced branding within Gmail's native app. If you were to sign up for Google Plus, the forgotten network, you get this great little favicon. It's great branding. Look, if you have your email authentication in line, you just get better visibility in the inbox. Right now, there's a new standard that Microsoft is championing along with some others called BIMI, brand identification, brand indicators for message identification. So the little green shield is what a message looks like that has trust in Hotmail's inbox. Not terribly exciting. That little yellow tag you see in the headers of Gmail, there is a new standard that is going to actually put your company logo in these things as a sign of trust. It's being talked about and experimented with right now. I think maybe next year we'll have a working standard that other people could try, but that's the future of trust in the mailbox, if you will. All right, last one. I like this one. The best place to land Gmail is the primary tab. So do whatever you can to get there. Yay, nay. It sounds reasonable, but it's totally busted. So in May 2013, Tabmageddon happened. Email marketers were about to jump through Windows. It was the end of email as we knew it. No one was going to open our email because it's going to be in this weird, like, promotional tab. And the promotional tab was like jail, and there was no get out of jail free cards. It was just going to be bad. I mean, there were marketers that were going like, I should do SMS now. Mail's dead. Well, it didn't end. As a matter of fact, it helped people actually love their inboxes a bit more. So ReturnPath just did this great survey about Tabmageddon some years on. And they came back with the fact that only about 30% of their respondents actually use tabs. More importantly, 90% of them thought the tabs were doing a good job, which means they're actually more happy with their email. And happy email users are happy customers all around. But the thing that got me was how often people checked. So most people check routinely. Who checks their tabs here? Yeah, a few of you, right? I check my tabs probably way too often, like click, 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 click. Only 20% of that 30% didn't check them at all. But here's the kicker. This wasn't in the data. I got no tabs here. Who's got tabs on their phone? Over 50% of all emails opened on a phone. It's moot. Tabs are okay. It's cool. More importantly, the postmaster from Gmail said, if you try to actually circumvent the tabs and game the system by changing headers and things like that, you will be penalized. They will find you. They will hunt you down in that Liam Neeson kind of way. All right. So this is my original summary slide. You know, doing all of the things that you should do in order to achieve good inbox placement. Sending craft beer to postmasters will not actually get you to the inbox. It will get me to talk to you, but I prefer whiskey. This is the one thing, if you take nothing else away, send beautifully designed email to people who want to receive it. At one point on the AOL Postmaster page, it literally said, send email to people who want to receive it. That was their simplest advice. If you think of yourself as a consumer, think of your consumers with the exact same mindset. How do you respond to email in the inbox? What do you do? That's what you should be doing with your consumers. Period. Thanks.